On the 1st of December, I received the news I had been dreading. The tests were conclusive. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. This means, essentially, that this will be my last holiday season. Surprisingly, I've made peace with that. I've lived a good life, and everyone I care about will be taken care of. Being a naturally private person, I hadn't told my wife, Leslie, about the tests. I didn't want to worry her until I had all the answers. So I left work early to have the talk with her. This was something I needed to do in person, not over the phone or through a text. Little did I know, that afternoon would change my life in more ways than one. When I got home, I noticed the car of one of my business partners parked in our driveway. It's a flashy, expensive car with a personalized license plate. Hard to miss. Seeing it there was definitely out of the ordinary. Curious, I checked our home security camera system on my phone and saw it was in privacy mode, meaning it wasn't recording. I decided to drive to my farm property instead. Our camera system is for security, and I usually don't check it unless there's a concern. But I do enjoy watching wildlife on the outside cameras and find it oddly satisfying to watch storms roll through. For my own amusement, I set up a second video recorder years ago to archive the camera footage to local storage, which isn't accessible via my phone. Once at the farm, I opened my computer and checked the other server to confirm my suspicions. Sure enough, there they were, snuggling in the living room, drinking wine, dancing, and then heading up to the bedroom. Apparently, they left the doors open because the microphone recorded their activities after they moved out of the camera's view. With my limited time left, I wanted answers, but didn't want the drama of a confrontation or divorce. Call me what you will, but all my love and devotion for Leslie vanished that afternoon. I felt the full range of expected emotions, but knew this wasn't my fault. I had been a loyal, romantic, and attentive partner. Now, I'm focusing on myself and what matters to me. I called my lawyer, reviewed my will and our prenup, and told him what was happening. We worked to understand how long and how deeply this affair had been going on. The findings were disturbing, making me question whether I ever truly knew the woman I spent over 2 decades with, or if she had changed over time. For now, I'm not saying anything to my kids. Leslie and I don't have children together, or to Leslie. I'll put on a brave face, get through the holidays, and give the kids and grandkids one last holiday memory with me. I'll be the doting father and grandfather, and try to play the role of a devoted husband. Some background to address obvious questions. Leslie's affair partner AP is a widower, not remarried, and a business partner, but not a friend. I don't mix business with friendship. I never married my twins, Mother Mary and Frank. It was her choice, and I agreed it was the right decision at the time. Their mother, Sarah, married a wonderful man named Steve when the kids were 7. They never had children together. I got my act together when the kids were 3 and became the father I wanted to be. Sarah and I co-parented well, and I consider Steve a friend. Sarah, Steve, and I are in our 60s. Leslie is almost 60, and AP is in his 50s. This is the first marriage for both Leslie and me. We married in our 30s. What do I need? An outlet, a release valve. To achieve my goal, I need to vent my anger and talk through my situation. What better outlet than internet strangers? I'm at peace with how and when my life will end. Christmas is always a week-long celebration for us. From Christmas to New Year's, we stay at the farm. Once everyone arrives, we go out and cut down a tree, then spend the week decorating, cooking, playing, and celebrating together as a family. Sarah and Steve have been part of this tradition ever since I bought the farm. I'm determined not to tell anyone about my diagnosis until after New Year's. If I tell Sarah, she won't be able to keep it a secret, and I don't want to put Steve in a position where he has to lie to his wife. I want the kids and grandkids to enjoy the week. There will be plenty of time to grieve and prepare in a few weeks. Leslie being there is just a minor detail in the grand scheme of things. Honestly, I care far less about her than the rest of the family. Our financial situation is quite interesting. Leslie and I met and married after we were both well established in our careers and finances. She had a good job with a great pension and 2 inheritances held in a trust. Early on, we agreed that we wouldn't disclose our entire net worth to each other, at her insistence. We also have a prenup stating that any property or trust that predates the marriage and any income from those sources aren't considered marital property. Again, her insistence. I've provided both properties housing and utilities, and I cover travel, food, and fuel expenses. Essentially, I support her completely. Her income and wealth are spent on herself. Her car, clothes, personal travel, and cosmetic surgeries. She's a beautiful woman on the outside, but she's shown herself to be quite ugly on the inside. A few days after my diagnosis, I announced my retirement from the nonprofit. Knowing what I know now, I noticed Leslie seemed a bit uncomfortable, likely because I'll be around more often. Tomorrow is my last day of work, and then I'll focus on spending time with the family. I gave the camera server information to my lawyer and granted him access from his office. I don't know if Leslie and AP have continued their activities, but I assume they have. At this point, I don't care. I know my worth, and AP is a significant downgrade. While he's flashy, I'm more low-key. I drive a 15-year-old pickup truck and prefer jeans, t-shirts, and coveralls in the winter. I know for a fact that AP doesn't have the wealth Leslie thinks he does. How? Because the trust has invested in his business, and I receive quarterly financial reports. I don't disclose my wealth to anyone. That's between my accountants and me. But let's just say the trust has been growing for 30 years. I live modestly, and there's enough for my great-great-grandchildren to enjoy the farm and have their education paid for. Once Leslie realizes what she's lost, it will be her reckoning. Unfortunately, I won't be around to see it. December got busy. We attended our usual social events these last few weekends. AP was at one of the parties, and it was hard not to keep an eye on Leslie and him. I don't think anyone noticed. With all the busyness of wrapping up things at work, I've had an easier time holding it together. Leslie hasn't shown any signs that she knows I'm aware of her affair. I'm not proud of this, but I still sleep in the same bed with her. I've been using her lately, but considering she's been using me for at least the better part of this year, I don't feel too guilty. I'm not as honorable as some might think. I hate this small amount of deceit. So don't worry about Leslie getting everything, because she won't. The trust is in good hands, and I've left detailed instructions on its management. Mission accomplished. We had a fantastic drama-free holiday week, and I made it to 2023. I apologize in advance. I find humor about my condition helps me cope. I know I'm being a bit selfish right now. Everyone dispersed yesterday afternoon. I don't have many updates because my week with my family is something I want to cherish privately. Observations about Leslie this week. I honestly think this was her first time stepping out. Being with all of us seemed to take a toll on her. It's funny how once you know something, a person's actions make more sense. She was secretive with her phone and often stepped out of family gatherings to get some air. The best was when she needed to run into town and one of the grandkids wanted to go with her. Watching her gymnastics to avoid taking the grandkid was something. I admit I played along, asking why she couldn't take the grandkid. So the affair is still ongoing. Now that I'm retired, she's been asking about my plans for the day or week. I tell her, then ask about her plans. Later this week, I'll suggest meeting up for lunch since he'll be in the same area, just to mess with her. As someone mentioned in another post, unpredictability is a cheater's worst enemy. This morning, I met with my lawyer. I made some decisions and had him draw up papers. I replaced my temporary will with a new permanent one, which has been signed and shouldn't need to change again. Preparing for all hell to break loose, I had him draft divorce papers based on the prenup and evidence of the affair. Leslie gets nothing but 25% of our shared assets. Think housewares and furniture. I keep all my liquid assets, retirement funds, and items I purchased with my own wealth. Also, if I push it, she'll have to pay alimony. I've signed the papers and created a packet with all our evidence of the affair, holding it in case I want to use it. I sold my loan to the trust, allowing the trustees to convert it to shares in AP's company. Speaking of the trust, I've decided how I want it managed. I'll reduce myself to a 1% trustee. The twins will take the majority of the trusteeship, with the 4 grandkids making up the rest. Sarah and Steve will be proxies for the grandkids. As each grandkid turns 24, their trusteeship will transfer from Sarah and Steve to them. If a fraction is left, Sarah gets the extra share/vote/value. I've planned a meeting with the kids, Sarah and Steve, for next week to explain everything they'll need to sign documents, and will want to know why I'm doing this. Once this is done, my personal value will be my liquid assets, personal property, and the money from AP's loan. In the worst-case scenario, Leslie will get very little compared to the trust's assets and value. Over the next couple of weeks, I'll disperse the personal items I want to give to the kids and grandkids. Those items are already in a safe location where my lawyer has access. Regarding my health, if I wasn't clear before, I'm not fighting this. I'm letting nature take its course, so I have no side effects from treatments. I did notice I got tired more easily this week, and the family noticed too. I played it off as just the old man getting older. I still have the cough that started it all. My lung tumors led to the diagnosis. I've been playing it off as a lingering COVID cough. I expect to decline quickly once other issues arise, but by then, everyone will know. Thank you all for your well wishes. I'm planning to spend time with my family. A large trip with everyone's different obligations would be tough, which is why this past week was so important to me. It was the last time I could be with all of them for an extended period. I'm considering a small trip for myself. We'll see. My next goal is to spend one-on-one time with each child and grandchild. Today was the big day. My lawyer, a notary, the twins, Sarah and Steve, all gathered at the farm. As you can imagine, it wasn't a cheerful reunion. The air was thick with tension, and everyone was on edge when they saw the legal folks. I asked them to sit, listen to me, and sign the papers when I was done talking. Once the documents were signed and notarized, I'd answer all their questions. They were all familiar with the trust, so I started there. I explained that it was time to pass the baton. I shared how vital the trust had been in my life, why I created it, and why it was kept separate from my marriage to Leslie. I left instructions on how I wanted them to manage and utilize the trust. We clarified that the trust would be split between the twins and the grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve holding equal proxy votes for the grandkids until they each turned 25. Their trust in me was evident. They signed the documents and got them notarized without hesitation. Once that was done, we collated copies, and I dismissed my lawyer and the notary, thanking them for coming out on a Sunday. They were gracious as always. Back in the dining room, everyone was silent. My daughter broke the ice with a torrent of questions, a stream of consciousness, really. As soon as she paused, I began discussing my health. I explained my diagnosis and listened as they made plans to fight it. This is where I stopped them. I explained the odds and told them I had already gotten a second opinion. Then I shared what you already know. I'm not seeking treatment. I'm letting nature take its course. We spent the next hour or so arguing. My daughter stormed out a few times and Sarah had to fetch her. While they were gone, Steve, my son, and I had a heart-to-heart. They understand where I'm coming from. They might not agree, but they understand. Sarah and my daughter will eventually come around. After things settled, I knew the next question was inevitable. When did I find out? I told them, and there was another round of anger and sadness. I explained that I wanted one more holiday week without being seen as a dead man walking. I admitted I was selfish and wanted the diagnosis to come after the holidays, so it wouldn't taint their memories forever. My daughter, sensing there was more, turned into a detective. She wasn't leaving the room until everything was out. She asked how Leslie hadn't told her. That's when I dropped the last bomb. I recounted the events exactly as I did in my first post. For the first time, I truly saw the fire of anger in my daughter's eyes. I told them Leslie still doesn't know that I know. I basically answered the same questions and scenarios you all suggested. So, I guess you all prepped me well. In the end, I told them I valued them way more than Leslie. For me, I just want to spend the rest of my days in peace, not worrying about Leslie. I had to explain my actions during the holiday week. They also pieced together her stepping outside for air and the trip into town where she didn't want to take the grandkid. They were worried I went through this alone. I told them I had some social media friends who helped me through the roughest times. I refused to tell them where and how. They can learn later, but I still want this space for myself. Emotions were raw, and we talked off and on as a group for a few hours, but I told them we needed to get back to discussing the trust. They understood that the trust would be crucial in preventing Leslie from obtaining my hard-earned wealth. It protects them, and that's why she wasn't part of this meeting. Then I needed to share the financials of the trust. I'm pretty sure they all saw it as a tax dodge, or just a way to protect assets in a marriage where the kids are from another woman. They weren't prepared for me to share the finances. As I went through the assets and balance sheets, the room fell silent. Then came the question, why did I work so hard all those years when I had this much? I explained my philosophy of personal finance, something they've heard many times before and take to heart. I told them I lived off the trust all these years. I put them through college with that trust. I made time in my life for them with that trust. And I was able to work for a nonprofit for basically free because of that trust. If there's any example I want to set for them and their children, it's to use this trust to do better for others, not just by writing a check for a charity, but by working for something they believe in. In my years with the nonprofit, I've accomplished so much more by training others and building relationships than just by writing checks. I'm not happy that today, everyone's lives at that table changed in so many ways, good and bad because of me. It wasn't the way I wanted it to happen, but it's done. They know everything. I begged and pleaded for them to let me handle Leslie. Not to talk about the trust with anyone. We'll maintain the status quo for now. When I get sicker, things will change. They all agreed. We spent the next few hours making a meal, talking, crying, laughing, and breaking into smaller groups. They all left about an hour ago, but I expect the twins to come back. I know they'll let their spouses in on what's going on. That's just how they are. And I love my two in-laws very much. I was surprised by a visit from one of my wife's friends, Alice. She's about the same age as Leslie and was hosting last week's girls' night out. You might remember from my comments that Leslie came home very intoxicated that night she used a rideshare. Alice has been an old friend of ours for ages. Ironically, I am the one who introduced them. Alice's parents were friends of my parents. Well, it seems my unpredictability has shaken Leslie up quite a bit. Last week at Alice's place, Leslie hit her breaking point. She got so drunk that she spilled the beans to Alice about her affair. Apparently, she just couldn't stop talking, even when Alice told her to shut up. Alice was furious, and as she kept condemning Leslie, Leslie kept trying to justify herself, rambling on with details. The next day, Alice reached out to Leslie, who didn't remember a thing. Alice gave her a summary of what she'd confessed. Leslie, of course, denied everything, insisting she hadn't said those things and that Alice was mistaken. Alice wasn't having it, and told Leslie she had a week to come clean, or she'd tell me herself. Since Leslie continued to deny it, Alice came to see me. So over coffee, I got the abbreviated version of Leslie's drunken confession. Alice expected me to be devastated, but I surprised her by telling her I already knew. I asked who else was around when Leslie spilled everything. Alice was the only one there. I then asked if she had told anyone else. She was offended and assured me she wouldn't spread something like that before talking to me. I apologized and explained that I had a timeline for dealing with Leslie, and involving others would complicate things. Alice understood. I asked her, as a favor, not to mention it to anyone and to let Leslie think she believed her. Alice agreed to keep quiet but wasn't comfortable pretending to believe Leslie. I asked her to try and assured her I'd be okay. Alice offered her help if I needed anything. I know I'll have to apologize again when she learns about my health, but I'll deal with that later. So tomorrow, I'm going to confront Leslie. We have a regular date night, and I plan to calmly tell her what I know about my condition and how I intend to spend the rest of my life without her. I hope the public setting will keep the drama to a minimum. Whether it goes as planned or turns into a disaster, I'll update you all this weekend. My plan is to hand her the evidence I have, ask her not to contact me or my family, and we'll see how it goes. Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Plans rarely go exactly as envisioned, and mine was no exception. Let me set the stage for you. Leslie and I have a weekly date night at our favorite restaurant, where we even have a regular table in a quieter area away from the bar. I decided this would be the place to confront her, planning to do so after dessert. I arranged for my lawyer and his wife to have reservations at the same time. Before we started, I gave our server, who has served us for years, payment for both meals. I also had Alice on standby to help Leslie after I left. My plan was simple. End the meal with a conversation about our relationship, record it, confront her, tell her what I know, explain my diagnosis and future plans, and give her a letter asking her not to contact me or my family or come to the farm. The letter would be witnessed, and I'd leave her a briefcase full of evidence, along with the divorce papers, then walk away. I expected Leslie to keep her composure in public to maintain her social status. I recorded the conversation. Leslie gushed about our great relationship and teamwork. I asked if I treated her well and if I had ever abused her. She said, "Of course not." Then I asked why she cheated. She claimed Alice must have told me lies. I told her I knew before Alice said anything. At that moment, all her prepared defenses vanished, and the color drained from her face. She could only ask, "What?" I told her to let me finish without interruption, and she nodded, looking like a deer in headlights. I explained how I came home after my doctor's appointment, rushing to talk to her, only to find her with him. I mentioned the cameras being in privacy mode and how I decided to go to the farm instead. I told her I had footage and she almost interrupted, but I raised my hand to remind her to stay quiet. I then told her about my diagnosis and my decision not to fight the disease. I saw heartbreak in her eyes, which made me angry. How could she feel sorrow for me? But I pressed on. I signaled the waitress, who brought my lawyer to our table. He handed me a briefcase and a letter. I told Leslie I didn't want her to contact me or my family or come to the farm after tonight. I signed the letter and asked the server to witness it. With the server and lawyer watching, I handed Leslie the letter. Then I dismissed them. I gave Leslie the briefcase, telling her I knew more than she expected. Inside were the divorce papers, already signed by me, ready for her to sign. I told her I didn't expect to survive a contested divorce, and as long as I was alive, she could stay at the home in town. I would be at the farm. I wouldn't see her again after tonight. I called Alice to help her home. True to form, Leslie kept her composure in public. She muttered a quick "but," and I reminded her I was leaving and was done. I tipped the server generously, found the owner, and apologized for not giving him a heads up. As I was leaving, I saw my son at the door with Alice. Alice passed me with a quick smile and a concerned look for Leslie. My son drove my truck while his wife drove me to the farm. They stayed with me Friday night until midnight. I finally got some sleep, feeling relieved, but with a renewed sense of loss. The family came to the farm on Saturday to check on me. It felt a bit coddling, but it was a good day until Alice came by in the afternoon. She said Leslie fell apart Friday night, but contacted her affair partner on Saturday. Realizing she was just being used, Leslie was in a bad state. Alice assured me Leslie didn't ask her to reach out to me, but she felt I should talk to Leslie to give her the strength to stay out of my life. Alice knows how to frame her requests. I reluctantly agreed to a 2-hour discussion at the farm with Leslie. We each had someone with us for support. Leslie chose Alice probably for damage control, and I chose my daughter. I wanted it to be as comfortable for Leslie as possible to avoid repeating this. I entered the meeting with a clear goal, to get Leslie out of my life. As expected, Leslie cried, apologized, and tried to minimize the affair. I wasn't having it. I explained she'd have a place to live until my death, then the house decision would be up to the trustees. She wouldn't see anything from my estate or the trust, but she had her 6-figure pension and her trust, so she'd be fine. She asked, "Why won't you fight for me or us?" I nearly lost my temper but replied, "I just don't care about you or us anymore." That crushed her. Here's where I need to vent. This is the mind of a selfish cheater. They think only of themselves. Even after destroying someone, they expect to be worth fighting for. F that. I wasn't worth fighting for against her desires or greed. F her. Sorry for the rant. Leslie got the answers she asked for but didn't want to hear. I don't want another meeting. Continuing them would distract me from what I want to do. Alice and Leslie left, but Alice came back a couple of hours later. She and I had a quick talk. Apparently, Leslie's affair partner received notice from the trustees that they're converting his loan into shares of his company, making the trust the majority owner. They're asking for a full forensic audit. My MBA daughter isn't wasting any time. It seems when Leslie went to her affair partner for comfort, she realized he was just using her. He was hoping she could buy the loan from me. I suspected he was up to something based on offhanded comments in the recordings. With the paperwork filed, him knowing I sold the loan to the trust, and Leslie out of my life, she's no longer useful to him, and he let her know. Leslie also confided in Alice that her trust is exhausted, leaving her only her pension income. She thought life with her affair partner would be more glamorous than with me. He drives nice cars, eats in fancy restaurants, flies us first class, while my husband played on his farm, drove an old truck, and we flew economy. She planned to divorce me when her affair partner expressed his undying love and desire to marry her. It disgusts me how greedy and shallow she is. I won't see it, but I expect my family will tell her my true worth after my death. I'm glad her true colors showed now, so I could deal with her and spare my family from her. Then Alice did something unexpected. She told me that since I'm no longer encumbered, if I need companionship, I should give her a call. I challenged her, asking why she or any woman would want to spend time with me given my diagnosis. She said that just because Leslie is an ignorant slut who didn't appreciate me, Doesn't mean divorcees or widows wouldn't line up to spend what time I have left with me. She said any time with me would be cherished, and she'd be first in line. I asked, but most won't know Leslie and I are separated? She said Leslie doesn't want the social groups to know, but she and Sarah will make sure the story gets out. I was polite and told her I'd think about it. She smiled and kissed my cheek. After she left, I thought about it but decided I don't want that complication right now. I've left out quite a bit, but those are the highlights. I'm doing okay. It's been a roller coaster. I need a few days of peace and quiet. The social groups will soon know about my marriage and my diagnosis. I'll have an endless stream of well-wishers. I knew I couldn't delay it forever, but I don't want to be treated differently. However, life is what it is. First, I'm doing okay. I'm still above ground and at a normal temperature. Every day on my feet is a blessing. My coughing has worsened a bit, and I'm experiencing some discomfort. I notice I'm getting winded more easily, but overall it's been a good week. Let's start with Leslie. She has gone to ground. Her status in the community has crashed hard and swiftly. Once the affair was out, she was politely asked to resign from any leadership roles. Most of her circle has judged her harshly, some even asking if she chased after their husbands. She's tried to reach out a few times, some through proxies. I've not responded. I told those intermediaries to let her know I've said all I needed to say and know all I need to know. I don't care if she needs closure. Why should I worry about her selfish need for that? She knows how I feel because I told her. Here are some details of the affair. It's been going on for at least 6 months. They took 3 trips together, playing different roles each time. Once they pretended to be newlyweds. Another time they were a couple celebrating a 20-year anniversary, and the last time they were vacationers who met at the same hotel. Role-playing seemed to be part of their dynamic. She used our house because it's set back from the road, so passers-by couldn't see the cars in the driveway. She also bought a second car and stored it in town in a parking garage, swapping cars when she went to his house so no one would recognize hers. She was very concerned about how this would be viewed by anyone in her social circle, and maybe so I wouldn't catch her. Her actions alone show the lengths she went to for the affair, solidifying in my mind how I feel and why I dealt with it as I did. I have no regrets. The drunken confession to Alice was partly due to my unpredictability. As soon as AP received notice of my sale of his loan to the trust, he started to distance himself from Leslie. Under the pressure of nearly getting caught and AP losing interest, she got drunk and spilled everything to Alice. You know what happens next. It's clear AP had ulterior motives for the affair. This doesn't excuse Leslie one bit. It just makes her more pathetic. AP wanted Leslie's help with his loan, and Leslie wanted the flashier life his money offered. It's interesting how ugly people attract each other. If decent people allow the despicable to pair up, we can find better partners. Sorry to those who, out of devotion, work on reconciliation. It wasn't for me. AP isn't happy about my daughter's intentions. He seems ready to fight it in court. He's rumored to be trying to raise money from other investors to pay off the loan, but word of his actions has already started circulating among my business acquaintances. Remember when I said you invest in people, not companies? Well, not many want to invest in him. I don't know what my daughter has planned for his company, but it employs many people, so she'll work hard to keep it running for them. I think she's worried AP has something to hide in the company's books. For the employees' sake, I hope it's nothing that can't be corrected. Family time has been great. I went to a high school basketball game with the family this week. I also scheduled a poker night, which was fantastic. Old friends, my son and my grandson were there. My grandson got to see how old school men sit around, tell tales, and just enjoy a night together. I hope to have a few more of these. We've eaten as a family 3 times this week. Alice came over one night and brought dinner. We ate and talked, but I kept her at arm's length. I'm still not comfortable letting her in. Chores on the farm comfort me. I walk the fences well, drive at times, check on the animals, talk to the employees, and help with equipment maintenance. Knowing this farm will stay in the family and continue to run fills me with peace. A part of me will live beyond my time here. I've also had a number of friends and acquaintances stopping by. Someone mentioned a living wake, and I think this is what they meant. I'm encouraging anyone to come out and see me. I enjoy spending time with these folks, even if it might be the last time. Thank you for suggesting that.